Why do 95% of people fail on keto? That's not an exaggeration. Most people who start a ketogenic diet either quit within a few weeks, regain the weight, or never see the fat loss they were promised. And here's the frustrating part. They think they're doing everything right. They cut carbs, they eat more fat, they buy the keto snacks, and still, the scale barely moves. Or worse, their energy crashes, their sleep suffers, and their hormones feel off. So what's really going on? Here's what's really happening inside your body. Keto is not just a low-carb diet. It is a metabolic therapy. And when it fails, it's usually because the root cause of metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, liver congestion, cortisol imbalance, or mitochondrial inefficiency, was never addressed. Keto doesn't fix a broken metabolism automatically. It reveals it. If your liver is overloaded, if your insulin has been elevated for years, if your stress hormones are driving blood sugar up behind the scenes, you can eat keto and still not burn fat. In today's talk, I'm going to break this down clearly, whiteboard style. We'll cover why insulin control is more important than carb counting, the liver's central role in fat burning, the hidden stress cortisol trap, why too much fat can stall fat loss, the electrolyte mistake that makes people quit, and the structured way to transition into real metabolic flexibility. If this matters to you, if you care about real fat loss, stable energy, and long-term metabolic health, stay with me. We're going to fix keto the right way. Let me know if you'd like any tonal adjustments before I move into the key points overview. Before we go deep into physiology, let me map out where we're going. These are the 6 reasons 95% of people fail on keto and how to correct them. They focus on carbs instead of insulin. Keto is not about zero carbs. It's about lowering insulin enough to unlock fat burning. There's a difference. They ignore liver health. The liver is the organ that makes ketones. If it's inflamed, fatty, or overloaded, you won't efficiently produce or use ketones, no matter how low your carbs go. They eat too much dietary fat too soon. If you constantly feed your body fat, it burns the fat you eat, not the fat you stored. That's a critical distinction. They underestimate cortisol and stress. Chronic stress raises blood sugar, even without carbs. Elevated cortisol can quietly block ketosis. They neglect electrolytes and minerals. Sodium, potassium, and magnesium depletion is the #1 reason people feel terrible and quit keto in the first month. They never transition toward metabolic flexibility. Keto isn't meant to be a food prison. It's a metabolic reset. The goal is flexibility, the ability to switch between glucose and fat efficiently. We're going to break down each of these in detail. Physiology first, then practical strategy. Because when you understand what's happening inside your body, compliance becomes easier. And when compliance improves, results follow. Let's start with the biggest mistake. People think keto is about carbs. It's not. It's about insulin. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Insulin is the hormone that tells your fat cells whether to store energy or release it. When insulin is elevated, fat burning is locked. When insulin drops low enough, fat can finally leave the fat cell and be burned for fuel. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body fat is money in a savings account. Insulin is the lock on that account. If the lock is engaged, you can't withdraw funds, no matter how much you want to. Most people trying keto are reducing carbs, yes, but their insulin never drops low enough, long enough to unlock fat burning. Why? Because insulin is influenced by more than just carbs. Frequent snacking keeps insulin elevated. Hidden processed foods trigger exaggerated insulin responses. Artificial sweeteners can increase insulin in some individuals. Even excessive protein, especially in insulin-resistant individuals, can slow ketone production. What the research shows is that insulin resistance can persist even when carb intake is low. In metabolically unhealthy individuals, fasting insulin levels can remain elevated for months unless eating patterns and meal timing are corrected. So the solution isn't just lower carbs. The solution is lowering insulin strategically. Here's the protocol I recommend. Eat 2 to 3 meals per day. No snacking. Leave at least 4 to 5 hours between meals. Finish dinner 3 hours before bed. Prioritize whole foods, meat, eggs, non-starchy vegetables, healthy fats. Keep protein moderate, about 1.2, 1.6 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight. And most importantly, measure progress beyond the scale. Track fasting insulin if possible. Track waist circumference. Track energy stability. Keto works when insulin drops consistently enough to allow metabolic switching. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I teach this physiology step by step so you can work with your body instead of fighting it. When people think keto fail, most think carb intake. But here's what's really going on inside your body. Ketosis doesn't just happen because you ate low carbs. It happens because your liver is healthy enough to produce ketones efficiently. When it isn't, keto becomes a frustrating experiment, not a metabolic solution. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your liver as a power plant and ketones as portable batteries. If the power plant is clogged or inefficient, it can't manufacture enough batteries. Without enough batteries, your devices, your brain and muscles don't get steady energy. You feel sluggish or stalled on keto and the scale stops moving. Ketogenesis, the process of making ketones, happens inside liver mitochondria when insulin is low and fatty acids flood in from fat stores. These get turned into ketone bodies like V-hydroxybutyrate. But if your liver already has excessive fat or metabolic dysfunction, two things happen. It doesn't make enough ketones even though you're eating low carb. It continues storing fat instead of oxidizing it. What the research shows is that people with fatty liver, a condition now called metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease, have impaired ketone production and metabolic flexibility. The liver keeps shipping fats into storage pathways instead of converting them into ketones that fuel the body. A short-term ketogenic diet has been shown to significantly reduce liver fat and improve hepatic insulin resistance because lowering carbs and insulin forces the liver to switch fat processing toward ketone production instead of lipogenesis, the creation of new fat. But here's the critical insight. Fat reduction in the liver should precede or at least accompany true ketone production. If you hit keto hard while the liver is clogged with fat, you may not reach sustained ketosis. And worse, you can stall fat loss entirely. Let's break it down visually. Healthy liver, incoming fat, ketones. Energy, fat-filled liver, incoming fat stored in liver, blocked ketone output. This is not your fault. It's physiology. So what actionable tools improve liver function before or as you do keto? Tools to optimize liver ketone production. Start with an initial period of controlled carbohydrate reduction and calorie awareness. Avoid throwing unlimited dietary fat at the liver before adaptation. Add gentle intermittent fasting to improve metabolic flexibility. Even a 12 to 14-hour overnight fast begins shifting liver metabolism. Prioritize nutrients that support liver mitochondria and fat oxidation, e.g. alpha-lipoic acid, B vitamins, taurine, and adequate choline. Choose healthy fats, monounsaturated plus omega-3s, over excessive saturated fats early in adaptation, especially if you suspect fatty liver. Regular movement and aerobic activity dramatically improve hepatic fat oxidation. And remember, a liver that can produce ketones efficiently is central to real fat loss and long-term metabolic health. This isn't a dietary fad, it's root cause physiology. If this is resonating, drop a comment. And when you're ready, we'll dive into a common keto trap, too much fat too soon and why it stops fat loss dead in its tracks. Now let's talk about one of the most misunderstood parts of keto and one of the biggest reasons fat loss stalls: too much dietary fat. I know, that sounds almost heretical in the keto world, but here's what's really going on inside your body. Your body will always burn the easiest available fuel first. If you are constantly eating fat, adding butter to coffee, snacking on fat bombs, pouring oils generously over everything, your body simply burns the fat you just ate. It does not need to touch your stored body fat. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body has two fuel tanks. Tank 1 is your refrigerator, the food you eat. Tank 2 is your freezer in the basement, your stored body fat. If you keep refilling the refrigerator every few hours, why would your body walk downstairs to the freezer? It won't. This is the core mistake. People confuse ketosis with fat loss. Ketosis means you're burning fat. Fat loss means you're burning your fat. Those are not the same thing. What the research consistently shows is that body fat loss still requires an energy deficit. Even on keto, low insulin makes fat burning possible, but it doesn't override basic energy balance. When dietary fat intake matches or exceeds expenditure, fat loss slows, even if ketones are measurable. Now here's the nuance. Early in keto adaptation, slightly higher fat helps reduce hunger and stabilize blood sugar. But once you're metabolically adapted, usually after 3 to 6 weeks, your goal should shift. Shift from eat fat to make ketones to let body fat make ketones. So here's the practical protocol. Keep carbs low, typically under 20-30 grams net per day. Keep protein adequate but not excessive. Use dietary fat strategically, not excessively. Eat fat to satiety, not beyond it. Remove fat bombs and bulletproof-style beverages if fat loss stalls. Prioritize whole food fats, eggs, salmon, olives, instead of pure added oils. And here's a powerful tool. If fat loss stalls, slightly reduce added fats and extend the fasting window. This allows insulin to stay low while forcing the body to pull from stored energy. Keto is not a high-fat contest. It's a hormonal strategy. If this is helpful, consider subscribing. I break down these metabolic traps so you don't waste months guessing. Next, we're going to tackle the silent saboteur almost nobody talks about, cortisol and stress, and how they block ketosis even when your carbs are perfect. Now let's talk about the silent saboteur, cortisol. You can eat perfectly keto. You can track macros, you can measure ketones, and still not lose fat. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Cortisol is a survival hormone. When your brain senses stress, emotional stress, sleep deprivation, overtraining, financial pressure, it signals your adrenal glands to release cortisol. Cortisol's job is simple: keep you alive. How does it do that? By raising blood sugar. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your brain thinks a tiger is chasing you. It doesn't care that you're on keto. It floods your bloodstream with glucose so you can run. It tells the liver to perform gluconeogenesis, making glucose from amino acids and stored substrates. Blood sugar rises. And when blood sugar rises, insulin follows, even if you ate 0 carbs. What the research shows is that chronic stress and poor sleep elevate fasting glucose and insulin, reduce metabolic flexibility, and increase visceral fat deposition, particularly around the abdomen. Elevated cortisol has been linked to impaired fat oxidation and increased appetite regulation disruption. So someone can be in keto nutritionally, but not hormonally. And this is common in high-achieving, busy individuals, especially those layering intense fasting, heavy workouts, and calorie restriction on top of an already stressed nervous system. Here's the correction protocol. Sleep is non-negotiable. 7 to 9 hours in a dark, cool room. Stop eating at least 3 hours before bed. Avoid high-intensity training during early keto adaptation. Focus on walking and strength training instead. Add simple parasympathetic tools: nasal breathing, 5 minutes of slow breathing before meals, sunlight exposure in the morning. Avoid stacking stressors. Don't combine aggressive fasting, severe calorie cuts, and overtraining at the same time. If your morning blood sugar is high despite low carbs, consider stress and sleep before blaming your macros. Remember, keto lowers insulin, but cortisol can raise it right back up. The body always prioritizes survival over aesthetics. Next, we'll discuss why electrolytes are the #1 reason people quit keto in the first month, and how a simple mineral strategy can make adaptation smooth and sustainable. Now let's talk about the reason most people quit keto within the first 2 to 3 weeks. It's not willpower, it's electrolytes. Here's what's really going on inside your body. When insulin drops, which is exactly what we want on keto, your kidneys begin releasing sodium. Insulin normally tells the kidneys to retain sodium. When insulin falls, sodium is excreted, and when sodium leaves, water follows. This is why people lose 3 to 7 pounds in the first week. It's mostly water. But here's the problem. When sodium drops, potassium and magnesium often drop with it. And that's when the keto flu shows up. Headaches, fatigue, heart palpitations, muscle cramps, brain fog, dizziness when standing. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of electrolytes as the electrical wiring of your body. Sodium and potassium create the voltage gradient that allows nerves to fire and muscles to contract. Magnesium stabilizes that electrical system. If those minerals fall too low, your nervous system misfires. People think, keto isn't for me. No, mineral depletion is the issue. What the research shows is that low carbohydrate diets significantly increase natriuresis, sodium excretion, especially during the first weeks of adaptation. Without replacing sodium, plasma volume decreases, which contributes to fatigue and orthostatic symptoms. So here's the simple correction protocol. Add 3 to 5 grams of sodium per day during adaptation. That's about 1 to 2 teaspoons of high-quality salt spread throughout the day. Drink to thirst. Don't force excessive water without minerals. Include potassium-rich whole foods like avocado and leafy greens. Consider 300 to 400 milliliters of magnesium glycinate at night for muscle relaxation and sleep. Bone broth can be extremely helpful during the first 10 to 14 days. Most keto failures are actually electrolyte failures. When minerals are balanced, energy stabilizes, cravings drop, adaptation becomes smooth instead of miserable. If this section helped clarify something you've experienced, consider subscribing. I post daily science-based guidance so you can implement these changes correctly. Now, for the final core concept, metabolic flexibility, the long-term goal that determines whether keto becomes a sustainable tool or just another diet you abandon. Now we arrive at the long-term goal, metabolic flexibility. Keto is not meant to be a food prison. It's meant to be a metabolic reset. Here's what's really going on inside your body. A healthy metabolism can switch between fuels. When you eat carbohydrates, you efficiently burn glucose. When you don't eat, you seamlessly shift to burning fat and producing ketones. That switching ability, that flexibility, is what most people have lost. Years of frequent eating, ultra-processed foods, and chronically elevated insulin lock the body into sugar-burning mode. The machinery for fat burning becomes downregulated. Mitochondria become inefficient. The liver becomes sluggish. Keto is a tool to restore that switch. But if someone stays rigid, afraid of ever eating a carb again, without ever testing flexibility, they miss the bigger goal. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your metabolism like a hybrid car. A healthy hybrid switches between electric and gas depending on demand. A metabolically inflexible person is stuck in one mode. Keto retrains the engine, but eventually you want smooth transitions, not dependency. What the research shows is that metabolic flexibility is associated with improved insulin sensitivity, better mitochondrial function, and reduced cardiometabolic risk. Individuals who can shift between substrates efficiently tend to have better long-term weight maintenance and energy stability. So here's the practical progression. Phase 1, stabilize insulin, lower carbs consistently, remove snacking, balance electrolytes, improve sleep. Phase 2, become fat adapted, stable energy between meals, no intense cravings, ability to fast 14-16 hours comfortably. Phase 3, test flexibility. Introduce small, strategic carb reintroductions, ideally from whole food sources, after resistance training or high-activity days. Monitor how you feel the next day. Hunger, energy, water retention, cravings. If blood sugar remains stable and cravings don't spike, that's metabolic flexibility returning. If it derails you, return to structured keto temporarily and repair the system again. The goal is resilience, not restriction. Now let's bring this all together. So let's bring this together clearly. 95% of people don't fail keto because keto doesn't work. They fail because they misunderstand what keto is designed to fix. Keto is not a carb counting contest. It's not a high-fat free-for-all. It's not a shortcut around physiology. It is a hormonal strategy. When insulin stays elevated, fat stays locked. When the liver is congested, ketone production struggles. When dietary fat replaces stored fat, weight loss stalls. When cortisol is high, blood sugar rises, even without carbs. When electrolytes crash, energy collapses. And when metabolic flexibility is never restored, sustainability disappears. Here's the empowering part. Every one of these has a solution. Lower insulin with structured meal timing. Support liver health with whole foods and gradual adaptation. Use dietary fat strategically, not excessively. Protect sleep and manage stress like it matters, because it does. Replace electrolytes intentionally and aim for metabolic flexibility, not permanent restriction. This is root cause thinking. This is how you work with your physiology instead of fighting it. And here's your challenge. Pick one of these changes today. Maybe it's removing snacks. Maybe it's adding sodium. Maybe it's committing to 7 hours of sleep. Track how your body responds over the next 7 days. Data beats emotion, because when your metabolism works, fat loss becomes predictable. Energy becomes stable. Focus sharpens. And long-term health, not just short-term weight loss, becomes possible. If this added value to your journey, like the video and subscribe. Join others who are serious about optimizing their health naturally, without guesswork, without gimmicks, and without medication as the first solution. Your metabolism isn't broken. It just needs the right signals, and now you know how to send them.